Dan here, live with you on Facebook and YouTube. Unless you're watching on the archive, then we're not live. You're watching the archive. But I'm here with first-time guest, first-time offender, Don Powell. Deserves another play of the intro music. There you go, Don. Don, welcome. I'm so excited to have you on for the first time.
Oh, this is great, Dan. I mean, it's amazing how the world's become a small place today. So how we can do this kind of thing, from the other side of the world in a way.
Yeah, literally. Don's in Denmark. I'm in Arizona in the US, and so much to talk about. And it's kind of embarrassing to me, honestly, when I think about Drum Talk TV's 1 month short of 13 and a half years, and I haven't had you on yet. But I want to tell everybody a little bit about you first.
Okay.
Then I want to tell everyone how I got introduced to Slade, and then share some pictures, and we'll talk about your career, what you're doing, and things like that. But for those who don't know, Slade is an English rock band that formed in Wolverhampton back in the year I was born, and I'm 63. This was in 1963, and Don joined in 66. But they were known as a glam rock band, and I'll get back to that in a moment. But in the early 70s is when they really got popular. 17 consecutive top 20s, including #1s on the UK singles chart, 3 #1s on the UK albums chart, and the British hit singles albums names them the most successful British group of the 70s based on sales and singles, and might have been the first, correct me if you think or know that I might be wrong, Don, but I think you guys might have been the first band with a Christmas song, the first pop or rock band. It wasn't a singing group like the Osmonds or something, a rock band with a Christmas song that is still very beloved in the UK today, right?
Oh, it charts every year, Dan. And would you believe that when we recorded that, it was 1973 in the summer. It was like we're in New York. We had a week off before we went to Australia and Japan, and our record producer was with us. He said, "Do you have anything? We've got a week here. Maybe we can get in the studio." I said, "Well, we've got this Christmas song." He said, "Let me hear it." He said, "We have to get to record this quick." And then it was where we were in the studio in New York, Dan. It was 100 degrees heat, and there we were singing Merry Christmas. And, we had strange looks from the technicians, as you can imagine. And I've got to let the cat out the bag now, because we only heard that song as we were in the studio. And if you listen very closely to the record, you'll just when the song finishes, you'll just hear one snare drum beat where I forgot to stop.
That's okay though.
You have to listen very hard, but it's there.
I'm gonna check that out. What's funny about what you said about the weather and singing Merry Christmas, before we went live, Don and I were talking about being in Australia. I lived there for a while. He toured there 4 times. And it's weird that we take it for granted in the Northern Hemisphere. We associate winter with cold weather and the holiday season with snow and things like that. But down below in Australia, South America, the seasons are opposite. And I remember being in Australia for the American Thanksgiving, and the guy I lived with was American, and for the holidays, it was just so different, living in a very, very tropical zone where there was never any snow in a million years.
I must tell you this story as well, Dan. On our first Australian tour in 1973, we do mainly open air shows. And I always remember we were in Adelaide, open air show, 60,000 people. You know what I'm going to say, Dan? It hadn't rained there for 30 years.
Don't tell me it rained that day.
The day that we played, the heavens opened up. But can you imagine, Dan? Most of the people there, the kids there, they'd never seen rain.
That is extraordinary. And Don, I have to attribute it to your rhythm resonated with the rhythm gods, the rain gods, right?
Well, you're right, Dan, because in all the newspapers the next day it say that we bought rain from England. So
that is hilarious. Did they invite you back because of that, to help with the ecosystem?
You can imagine most of the kids that had never seen rain. And it was like like something from a Red Indian film. They were dancing around, sort of looking up into the skies and seeing this rain coming down, and we had to stop the concert, pull the equipment back, and had to put drapes down the side because it was blowing through. And it was just such, well, for us, it was just such an unusual sight. You know, to see people dancing around, never seen rain before.
When was the next time? Did the rain go away when you guys went away?
I think it stopped. It stopped while we were still on stage. It was just one of those amazing sort of, probably for about 10, 15 minutes, Dan.
Yeah.
Like torrential, and then just stopped. You know.
I'm telling you, it had to be the drums. It had to be.
Yeah. I mean, the one thing I always regret, there's no photographs. I really wish there had been photographs. You know, it's so different today. Well, there's just photographs everywhere. But it was just a strange experience coming from the UK and seeing like 60,000 people. Majority of them had never seen rain.
That's funny. And I want to let everybody know who's watching. I'll take questions. I'll relay comments. If you ever saw Slade, if you're a fan, if you have their albums, if you ever bought any clothing to mimic, I'll get into that. So Don and everybody, here's how I was introduced to Slade. First of all, Slade Alive was released January 1st of 1972. Maybe the first album released that year of a rock band, being January 1st, unless there were a bunch of other ones released that day. I don't know. But my mother is the one here. I'm going to show the album. My mother's the one that bought me the album. And I was 9 3 months later in April. I turned 9. So, and I was already playing drums for a year and a half at 8 years old. And I asked my mom, like, why did you get me this one? Are you familiar with the music? You know, but I asked that in the way 8-year-olds would ask. And she said, no, I just liked the cover. It's a black and red lithograph and you could see the band playing. So she thought it was cool. She knew it was live. And I just fell in love with the album. What I didn't know, especially being so young, is that you guys were labeled as, you know, a rock band and a glam band. And I did not really understand what that meant until many, many years later. I saw, oh, this is what they really looked like. So I understood the whole glam relationship. So you got that. And there's Don at a nice 5-piece chrome kit. And he did endorse Ludwig drums. But a fun fact that many people don't know, Don, is that you also endorsed Wrigley's Spearmint Gum.
Yeah, I was sponsored, you know, by, you know, I had to chew Wrigley's all the time, otherwise people wouldn't recognize me.
What was the story behind this? What's going on there?
Well, really, all it was, Dan, is like I used to chew gum just to keep my mouth moist, you know. So, you know,
where you're playing.
So I couldn't get a drink because we were just playing non-stop. So I used to chew gum just to keep my mouth moist. And it's just incredible how it caught on. You know, I was known as the drummer that chewed. You know, so it's just, and I got sponsored by Wrigley's Chewing Gum Company, as you can see there.
Yeah, that is just amazing.
I had to chew gum all the time, Dan.
What was your favorite flavor? Was it the spearmint that you're holding up there?
Just spearmint, yeah.
Yeah, awesome. And then here's the band live, Don up front, the way it should be, the drummer in the front, right?
That was a TV show. That was
yeah.
That TV show. That one. That was, yeah.
Was that maybe the Old Grey Whistle Test? Maybe was it around?
It looks like it could have been Top of the Pops in the UK. Or it could have been a TV show in Holland called Top Pop.
Yes.
We used to play there. They used to invite us there every time that we had a single released. And I just believe Holland was the first country we had a hit record.
I love the fashion, though. Yeah, the fashion statement on stage is just amazing. There we go. Zoom in on this one a bit. There we go. And you know, you guys have influenced so many, not just bands and musicians, but different styles. And then there's this. Talk about this. This is the 5-piece box set that is a great callback to some of your guys' best stuff. You got the live album. There's a program. There's some really great stuff here.
I'm really proud of this, you know, Dan, because when the record company approached us about repackaging the whole catalogue of us, and they did a fantastic job. I'll have to take my hat off to them.
Yeah,
And they took everything we ever made and repackaged and re-released it, Dan. Incredible what they did.
That's great. And the live album, I forgot to mention right there, the live album was remastered in 2009. What are your thoughts on that, Don, as far as remasters and things? I have personally mixed feelings as a listener, and I'll tell you why before you give your answer. The reason why I have mixed feelings about it is because a lot of the albums that were recorded, and I'm just going to use the early to mid 70s as an example.
I know what you're going to say, Dan.
Yeah, they sound the way they sound because of the equipment that was available at the time, and that just encapsulated that sound. And for me to go back and remix it, it's almost like painting over a Van Gogh to update it or something. It just
I know exactly what they weren't remixed, Dan. All the tracks, they weren't remixed, they were remastered. But we were there when it was done. We had the last say. We wanted to hear what they were doing, and thankfully they did a great job, Dan. They didn't take away the excitement. They didn't make it too clean. That's sometimes what I find with that kind of situation, Dan, is when they try and remaster or they make it too clean,
right?
And it takes away the original excitement, and that's why we wanted to be there in the room.
That's great.
Before remaster, so that we could have the last say. To make sure that the excitement wasn't lost and the spontaneity wasn't lost.
That's great, because whether it's a studio album or a live album, the original mix and the original mastering really is, for so many reasons in so many layers, a representation of time in music, time in recording technology, time in production styles. And to change that too much, kind of you lose something there, I think, no matter how much better it sounds.
Well, it's okay for certain acts, I think, but for us, we're basically a rock band. We didn't want to lose the rawness. That's why we insisted on being in the room when it was done, so it didn't come out too clean, if that makes sense. No, they did a great job. I will say that the technicians who remastered all the material, they did do a great job, but we were on their shoulders to make sure.
So you joined the band in 1966. You played with Slade for 50 years. Did you ever imagine you'd hold the same job in any industry for 50 years, let alone be in a rock band for the same band for 50 years?
Yeah, it's just incredible. When we first started, Dave Hill and myself have been together since '63. We were just playing like youth clubs and birthday parties and wedding parties and things like that, But it's just incredible. It was more or less, it was just fun. We were just having a great time, just playing just tiny bars, youth clubs, and wedding receptions and things like that. But that's what it was then, And I remember John, who was our original singer. He came to us once. He said, "We've got this booking to play at this wedding reception." Yeah, and we're getting paid, and we get paid for doing this. We get paid for doing this, We got how can I say? It was about probably about $15, something like that. We got paid, But that was amazing. I got money for doing this,
And maybe being a wedding, you got fed, possibly. Well.
That's why we used to, around that period, Dan. That's why we love playing weddings and birthday parties, because we can drink and eat for free.
And there's cake. And cake on top of that.
Yeah, I remember we were trying to steal the wedding cake one time because it was so good, but we were stopped, as you can imagine. We were stopped.
Yeah, it's hilarious.
Yeah, but it was just wonderful times, Dan. It's part of the learning, really, and that's what I find now when I speak to the new young bands today, that they've never been through anything like that.
Right.
and they don't really understand, I mean, but it's just the way things are today. It's just like, I love going back and like we are now, Dan, and just reminiscing on those very early days, sort of taking out equipment just on the bus, sort of thing, where we can, because we didn't have transport then, no road managers then, nothing like that. It was all done in house, so to speak. Incredible.
All grunt work, and then you made some music.
and the worst thing was though, when you're sort of worn out after you play for maybe 2 hours, then you got to pack the equipment away.
All fried. So let's see, John Papalardo watching from Miami, Arizona, down the road from me. David Marlette, Bethlehem, Kentucky, and Paul Wrights says, massive fan, saw them live in Central Park, would like to ask Don the difference between Kim Foley producing an early single versus Chaz Chandler's later production. Also, can Don talk about the iconic drum groove on Goodbye T. Jane? Thanks.
Oh wow, yeah, that's amazing. No, with Kim Fowley, I mean, he saw us playing this club in London in 1966, and he was so eccentric. I mean, there's this like tall guy, but about 7 foot tall, sort of thing. You could see him over the crowd, standing there. We didn't know who he was, and he came backstage and he said he wanted to record us, things like that. We thought yes. So anyway, we arranged a date, and there's this tiny recording studio. It was called Olympic Sound, not Regent Sound, in a tiny street, and apparently it's where the Stones did a lot of their very early recordings. It's only like a front room, and we did about 6 tracks, and most of the stuff that we were playing on stage there, because we weren't writing our own material then, and the song that was actually chosen for release was the Young Rascals song called You Better Run. And that was released in 1966. And if you listen closely, because Kim was so much of a screwball, it was just one take for him, just one take. That don't need to go anymore. And if you listen to that record, it should have been a fade out, Dan, but he just left it going, and it just falls apart at the end. It should have been. I love that. He just left it all on, So,
and then you guys just separately stopped, slightly different.
Yeah, I mean, it was just the way it was. But it was a fantastic experience for you, especially with Kim Fowler's track record, so to speak. With the Hollywood Argyles and things like that, Alley Oop and all things like that. But he was he gave us so much confidence, actually, Dan. He really gave us so much confidence.
That's great. And what about the drum groove that Paul asks about for Goodbye T. Jane?
That really was something that was, again, we heard that the same day as we recorded it. Noddy Hod and Jim Lee, they sort of played it to us in the studio. We had about 30 minutes left, and our record producer and our manager, Chaz Chandler, said, we got 30 minutes, have you got something? And I was just playing around with this drum beat. It was like an intro to a TV show we used to do in Germany. And I was just playing around with it, and we said, and then I think it was Chaz said, keep that. I think we can use that as the intro. And I thought, what are you talking about? How's this going to work? So listen to me. And what we did, I just did about 30 seconds of this drum beat. And when we actually finished the track, he got the engineer to sort of loop it onto the intro of the take and cut it down just enough to fit the intro.
Wow.
It's amazing how these things work, lots of little things like that, sort of. And I remember a bit later on, if I can carry on down, there was I was in this recording studio. It was an enormous office block as well, and I went to the toilet, and I just that's just a great natural echo in here. I wonder if we can put the drums in here. So we had to wait till the office is closed at 6 o'clock, and we took the drums down there, just put a few mics in, and it was it was a thunderous sound, Dan. You can remember,
Built-in reverb, right?
yeah, with the tile walls and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we're going through this take, and there was what's that? What's that noise? Stop! What's that noise? We forgot to turn the automatic flush off in the toilet. Yeah, those little, oh no! So
That's hilarious.
turn the water off and start again. But
Yeah.
I love those little stories, Dan. Sort of
Yeah.
thing. It's because if I can carry on, Dan, I'm a mega Beatles fan, and I've got some of the very early sort of pirate recordings when they're in the studio, the very early days. That their first album was made in one day. Because they're an unknown band, that's all they would give them.
Right.
One day, and that's why the last track they recorded was "Twist and Shout," and Lennon's voice is really shot, but it just sounds fantastic on that track.
It does. I couldn't hear it like with a clear voice,
No. I mean, when you hear these stories later, and I've got some pirate tapes. I mean, they left the tapes running in the studio, Dan, and you could hear they're playing like this rock and roll song, and it falls apart. And you could hear John Lennon saying to Paul McCartney, "What are you playing? What are you doing?" And he said, and Paul McCartney, "I haven't got my plectrum." Well, where is it? And you can hear George Harrison shout, "Well, your suitcase is still in the van. That's where the plectrum is. Just the one plectrum."
That's hilarious.
That's amazing how they left the tape running and recorded all these things.
I love that stuff. Yeah.
I just wonder. I can listen to for hours, Dan. Things like that.
Yeah. Wonderful. So Don, let's go way back.
Okay.
When did you start playing drums? How old were you, and what started that?
Well, Boy Scouts, would you believe, Dan?
Really?
Drums when I was 15. But the thing was, to play drums, you had to work your way up. You had to play the bugle first. Before I couldn't get a sound out the bugle. I used to stand at the back and just puff my cheeks out, pretending I was blowing it. I couldn't get a sound out of it. Anyway, I got found out, and my first job was to clean the drums. Cleaning the drums. And would you believe my very first pair of drumsticks? Because I couldn't afford to buy drumsticks. I wouldn't know where to go anyway in those days. I was 15. And I made my first pair of drumsticks out of the stem of an artificial Christmas tree.
Oh, wow. How ironic.
I spent months, carving it with my penknife and smoothing it off and varnishing it. But the thing is, Dan, not knowing about wood, anything like that in those days, first time I used them, they broke.
They broke out.
And
right?
I actually cried. I spent months.
After all that work.
All that work, and they broke. Of course, like I said, not knowing about wood in those days, it was obvious what was going to happen. But that's how it really started.
Interesting. And who were some of your first influences? Like, who was around back then?
Well, I was a member of this youth club, and the people. With Eddie Cochran, they were playing things like that on the youth club, sort of record player, and a lot of English singers. There's more like a guy named Marty Wilde, and there was like Billy Fury, Joe Brown. They were sort of hillbilly type things, But that was my introduction to music. And when the two guys who came in and sort of found me out, is Johnny and Mick. Johnny was the singer and Mick was the guitarist. They needed the drummer, and so there was just the three of us. And we used to rehearse in Johnny, the singer's front room. And he had a bathroom off the front room. So I had the drums in the bathroom. And they only had one amp for the guitar and for the voice also, Dan. And we used to and they were a few years older than me. So they were into things like by Buddy Holly and Eddie Cochran and people like that. I couldn't believe it when I heard these songs. It was a revelation to me. I thought, what's this? How come I've never heard this before?
Yeah.
Especially Buddy Holly, just incredible. and that's what really started me off. I really got into the into American rock music then, Dan.
That's awesome. Tell us a bit about both the Don Powell Band and Don Powell's Occasional Flames. And why occasional?
Well, because all the two guys, there's like Paul. Yeah, he's a school teacher, and Les, he's just a guitarist. He does just local gigs in bars and clubs, and they approached me. They came to a gig and they said, "Are you up to doing some drums for us?" I said, "Yeah." So I'll try that, and we went to meet them. They were just a bit further north from my hometown, and I went to meet them, and we just had a great time in the studio. I mean, Paul was basically a poet, but he'd written quite a few nice lyrics for songs on which we all did put together. We all wrote and arranged together, and we had a great time. And we I remember we just we're on a roll down. We put 10 tracks down in one day or one afternoon.
Wow.
We're just on a roll. We just did it, and it worked out great. And maybe soon we'll do some more recordings, Dan.
Wow. And in 1921, yeah. in 2021, yeah. The Don Powell Band released a cover of Sandy Nelson's "Let There Be Drums." Yeah. How fun was it to do your rendition of a classic like that?
Well, it's like I was saying, Dan, in my youth club days, this record was always being played on the sort of the Danzette record player, in the youth club. And I said, "Who's this? Who's this?" And before the internet and things like that, I was going around to record shops trying to find out about this guy, Sandy Nelson. And they gave me some information that American guy, he sort of, recorded, "Let There Be Drums" and things like that. I thought, wow. And it's always been the back of my mind to do a version. And we did for a charity thing. It was about 10 drummers I got together, for UK drummers, and we each had a small part each to do it. And then a couple of guys, they said, this was like the Don Powell Band then, why don't we re-record it with just you on drums? And that's what we did, sort of thing. It's just a classic, really, when you think that, I mean, I don't know what the recording equipment was like in those days, but to me, that's what makes the sound is such a great live sound. No messing around with the drums, just going and playing, and
I love it.
It was a great time, and it did quite well for us. It was okay.
Yeah, and folks, you can find that on an 8-track CD called "Born to Rock and Roll." So look at that, which is also the title track. So check that out. Yeah. So you've done so many things. Oh, you played with Ringo there in Denmark. What was that, 2018? What was that like?
Oh, that my hero. I mean, I'm a mega Beatles fan, sort of thing.
Yeah.
And funny enough, I saw it on the internet. This drummer in Seattle, and I liked, he had a lot of vintage drums, and I liked a lot of the things that, we were just sort of in contact via the email and things like what we're doing now, Dan. And so I really like some of your drums. So we got talked about drummers, and I said that Ringo is one of my favorite drummers. He said, well, a friend of mine, Greg Bisonetti, another American drummer, is playing with in Ringo's band, and they're on tour at the moment. I thought, oh, fantastic. Anyway, it was a few weeks later, Dan, I saw that Ringo and his band, they were doing a concert here in Denmark, not far from where I live with my wife and family. And I thought, I wonder, so I contacted this guy again. I said, is there any chance you can maybe put the feelers out with Greg, Ringo's drummer, maybe passes, But I did meet Ringo. It was back in the early 70s when we did a concert in Los Angeles, and Ringo came to the show to watch us. Oh. And it was really strange. We were on stage. I was playing, going. I just looked to the side, and then I saw Ringo standing to the side, and I went all to jelly. One of
No
my
pressure.
one of my heroes, sort of thing.
Yeah.
There, and he was great. Anyway, sort of, we got to the concert. And he was so nice. He remembered everything about the 70s when he came to see us in Los Angeles. And then we were just talking and I didn't know how much he wanted to talk about the Beatles. I was sort of treading gently, sort of like that. I don't know how it came about. I said, well, I've got so many films of your early days on American tours playing these big stadiums, no monitors. No,
that's crazy, right?
He said, well, they weren't around then. He said we were just playing when they played Shea Stadium, the big arena in New York. He said they used the house PA that was used for like football commentary.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And there's no monitors.
How'd they even hear themselves on stage with just the Vox amps and cabinets, right?
Well, because he said, Vox made us big amps, they made us 100 watts, sort of thing. And he said there was no miking up. The miking up, but it was through the
PA system.
That they use for the football commentary.
Yeah.
He said a lot of the time we were just finishing in different times. We didn't know, where we were, but that's the way it was then. It was just amazing. And you know what he said then, Dan? He said, "Do you want to get up on stage and play?" I said,
wow.
I said, you try and stop me.
What song did you play?
I'll tell you. He said, you can play my drum because I'll be down the front singing. You said, you can play the last two songs with us with a little help from my friends and give peace a chance.
Yeah, nice.
And I've got the photographs to prove it, Dan.
Yeah, that's amazing. So he, at that time, was and still is, I believe, using like the classic Ludwig Black Oyster.
Yeah,
kit,
right? I think he's using DW now, but they copied the Black Oyster from they copied that, and that was my very first. With the drum set that I bought was exactly the same setup as Ringo had.
Yeah, I remember seeing a picture of
Ringo
that.
had it, and I thought I have to get the same one.
Yeah. I saw a picture of you with that kit, but it had a watermark all over it. So I didn't use it. But wow, that must have been really fun. So Don, you've traveled pretty much all over the world. Are there certain places that when you saw them on the itinerary, you got excited about? I know you got excited about every place, but were there particular reasons at particular destinations you got excited about, whether it was the food or the architecture or the history or the coffee or the weed or whatever?
Yeah, I think mainly in Russia. Russia,
really?
As it was still under the communist rule then,
Right.
Very heavily under the communist rule. We did the first time was when we went to Poland about 1979, very heavily under the communist rule. We were there for about 4 weeks, and we had a fantastic time.
Yeah.
Sort of thing. I mean, the shows are so early. I mean, you get the grandmas with their shopping bags and sitting down on the chairs and that kind of thing. And it was just wonderful. And I think the very first time we went to Russia, and we played in Moscow, we played the Olympic Stadium in Moscow. We were booked at 18,000 people, Dan. And it was absolutely. But the only thing is, people weren't allowed to stand up. Just before we went on stage, along the front of the stage, down on the arena level, the militia was lining up with their nightsticks.
Oh, wow.
Sorry, and no one was allowed to stand up. And we said to the promoter, we can't work like this. We need to have a feedback from the audience. They won't be allowed to, and we sort of got them up. People were right at the back, so the militia couldn't get to them. But
how weird, right?
We had a fantastic time there. Oh, that's right. We played the Olympic Stadium and we had a few days off in Moscow, Dan. And then the promoter came to us and said, listen, I've had this request from this guy. His wife, apparently, was a big fan of yours from the 70s. He's having a surprise birthday party for her in this big restaurant. He said, he's asking, would you play just for 30 minutes for his wife's birthday as a surprise, in this restaurant? And we said, yeah, that would be great, because we have
Oh my gosh.
a few days off. And he said, but she can't see you. There's got to be no drum, signs on the drum skin or anything. And we said, yeah, that's fine. And we did all that. Right. It's just in this restaurant for probably about 30 people, I think, Dan. And we had the most fantastic night. You should have seen his wife. It was a big surprise for her, but it was a fantastic night we had.
What an amazing memory that created for all those people. That's legendary.
But it was same for us, though, Dan. They were in this restaurant in the middle of Red Square, playing for this girl's sort of birthday party, where with the night before we played to 18,000 in the Olympic Stadium, Wow. But it was just a fantastic night. Fantastic night. It reminded us of our very early days when we started playing youth clubs and wedding parties and things like that. That's what it reminded me of. And it was a wonderful memory jerker.
That's cool. And looking at the comments, watching on YouTube, JJ Johnny A5965 says they just sold off. I think he's referring to DW, possibly. They just sold off the Jim Urshi Collection 2 of Ringo's kits. Or maybe it's from Ringo's actual collection that he's referring to. Feel free to go ahead and add to that, Johnny. Don, I saw a picture of you with and it wasn't of you with Ozzy Osbourne, but it was a picture of you and a picture of Ozzy. You're originally from Birmingham, where the Black Sabbath guys are from, right? Did you know them? Like, was there a relationship there?
Me and Ozzy used to hang around together.
Yeah,
exactly what you would imagine, Dan. We used to meet in this bar early in the mornings. The owner used to let us in. And we'd be drinking, and he'd have a beer glass like this, and he'd have everything in: whiskey, gin, vodka, rum, everything you could think of in this one glass.
Good grief! Wow.
We'd have two or three of those, and then it'd be on brandy. And anyway, I must tell you this story. That I was in the wine bar waiting, and no Ozzy. And I thought, well, I'll wait. I'm not calling him in case Sharon answers the phone. I'm not going to call just in case. Anyway, after about an hour and a half, the wine bar owner came to me and said, look to the front door. And there was Ozzy standing there in a dress. Now, this is in London, right? He's standing there in a dress. And I'm sort of biting my lip, waiting for him to come along. But it turned out that his wife, Sharon, had locked all his clothes away so he wouldn't go out. And so
that's hilarious.
Put one of her dresses on.
That is so funny.
He was such a wonderful person. No ego at all, Dan. He was just a great guy. Anyway, so the one day, the owner of the wine bar wanted to close the bar out for the afternoon so he could do some work some decorating work in the bar. So he said, if you want to buy some drinks, buy some, but I need you to leave the wine bar. And Ozzy said, we'll go back to the house drinking. And I said to his driver, I said, is this a good idea? But he went, no. I said, is Sharon in? And he said, yes. And I said, I'll give it a miss. And of course, Ozzy started swearing. And we go back. We're walking up the driveway, holding bottles of wine and beer and things. And Ozzy shouts, run. And I look up. She's out the window with a shotgun. The bottles go in the air, Dan. We're running down the driveway. We just get out of the gate, and at the bottom of the driveway, they're just taking charge of this brand new top of the range BMW. The thing, this model, and she lets the shotgun go and blasts all the side of this car.
Oh my gosh! What year was this, Don? When was this?
And I was shaking. It was in the 80s. And
in the 80s.
I was shaking, and all Ozzy, I could hear Ozzy running up, and I could hear them fighting upstairs, and I went home.
Wow, what a story!
He's one of the funniest people I could ever that show, the Osbournes, but it's just like he is.
Yeah.
Sort of thing. The one I must tell you this story as well, Dan. the one day we're in the wine bar, and Iron Maiden were doing a big concert in London, and it was arranged for Ozzy to get up and sing the Black Sabbath classic Paranoid. So, I said, we'll go to the concert. Anyway, he said, I want to go to a fancy dress place to get something to wear. I said, okay. Anyway, we go to this fancy dress place. He puts these pink tights on, the little tutu, got the ballerina's outfit on, right, sort of thing. I said, yeah. He said, what do you think? I said, pretty good. He said, just as a joke, Dan, I said, because it was that time of day, the people were coming out of work, a lot of traffic in London. I said, it'll be easier if we go on the bus, and just joking. And he went, great idea. I thought, no. Anyway, we're on the bus, the crowded bus. He's there with his pink ties, his little tutu, and the ballerina outfit. And anyway, we get to the concert. He goes on stage, and the place just erupts.
That's hilarious.
It just erupts.
Don, I have somewhere, I just redid my office, so I still have some stuff in boxes, but somewhere I have all the old magazines from like Cream, Hit Parader, from the 70s and 80s. Somewhere I have, when his first tour happened with Randy Rhoads and Rudy Sarzo, there's an article with a bunch of pictures, and there's a picture of him in that outfit at home on the phone. So I've seen the exact outfit that you're talking about. That's hilarious. Now I know the backstory to that picture. JJ Johnny also says he's referring to owner of the Colts bought 2 full kits of Ringo's. He owned few of John's guitars, I think, and he had Ginger Baker's kit. I didn't know that.
Wow.
Yeah. Huh.
Oh, that's another story, Dan. When we first started, we were just in this youth club, members of this youth club, and we used to rehearse in the youth club. And in return, we had to play it was called the dance then. We used to play at the youth club dance at the local hall, and he started booking bands, to sort of well-known bands at the time. And one of the dances, he booked Cream with Eric Clapton, Jack Bruce, and Ginger Baker.
Yeah,
sort of thing. And they were virtually unknown at that time, Dan. Not many people really knew who they were, except the aficionado, the people who knew. But in those days, Dan, there was no separate dressing rooms because there was no big star treatment there.
Right.
The dressing room was the store cupboard on the side of the stage. And so we were in there. There was us, Robert Plant, and Cream. All in this one room. And Ginger Baker had this his enormous double Ludwig kit set up in the dressing room. Of course, everyone was standing around, couldn't move at all. But he looked like a mad Viking anyway, with a long red beard and the long red hair.
Yeah.
And everybody was scared to go and ask him to move his drums so we could have a bit of space. But Robert Plant actually took up the courage and went up to Ginger Baker and he said, Mr. Baker, he said, would you mind just moving your drums? Just oh.
Did he almost like lose his mind?
Are you there?
Yeah, we're still here.
Oh, I can't see you. Wait a minute. I can see myself.
Okay.
Oh, well.
Oh, it looks like you're
there. Oh, okay. Anyway, Robert Plant goes up and says, Mr. Baker, would you mind moving your drums? And I can't repeat the amount of superlative he turned out to the Plant. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, what an experience back then! And then to see, what happened with all these artists, right?
Yeah, I mean, just like little kids playing with the Hollies. They were carrying their own equipment before the days of Brody, Graham, or the original lineup carrying their equipment in. So I wish I was taking photographs.
That's hilarious. I'm going to switch to, somehow you're on her twice. I'm going to switch to your other one because the audio is kind of weird. Give me 1 sec.
You can hear me.
How's that?
Hello? Oh, still there. You're still there.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
I can hear you fine.
Okay.
I can hear you anything. Are you getting that, Dan?
Yeah, I can hear you and see you.
Oh,
yeah.
that's cool. That's fine. Yeah. I could just get a slight echo on my voice, but it's
Oh,
okay.
okay.
If it's okay for you, then just carry on.
Okay, cool. No worries.
Yeah.
What are you up to now? I know everyone wants to know, what are you doing now? Are you playing, recording?
Recording with it's got a Don Powell Band now. The guys who I've known from my hometown who are around for many musicians, and we just got together and we did some recordings, and it was nice to go to a studio, and we just go in and play. No, no computer, nothing like that. We just went in 1, 2, 3, let's go, and
Nice.
it was wonderful.
Nice and organic. I love that.
Well, yeah, it's just how you remember from the early days, you know. And he had an engineer who was with us on that kind of thing. So, you know, no click tracks, nothing like that. We just went in and played that, and it was wonderful.
With all the technology available today, still some of the absolute best studio recordings are from that era, the 60s and 70s.
Exactly. Because there's a spontaneity. I remember when Slade was still recording, we go to maybe 4 or 5 takes of the same track, and then we said, stop. We'll just keep everything down. Let's go back and listen to the first one. And that's the one.
That's awesome.
One. Yeah.
Well, Don, I have a very special question for you. This is my last question is always my most fun question.
Okay.
And this is called the Don Powell Fun Fact segment. So when you're not playing music, when you're not listening to music, when you're not recording music, when you're not cleaning drums, playing drums, tuning drums, or setting up drums, or tearing down drums, or packing drums, or unpacking drums, or doing anything related to music, what do you like to do outside of music? Give us a peek behind that curtain.
I'm a film buff. I'm a film.
What is that? Say that again, please.
Films.
Oh, really?
He goes. I've got so many DVDs. And, you know, lots of films. I'm a real film buff.
Wow. What are some of your favorite? What's your favorite genre? Let's start with that.
Well, I've got all genres really. But my favorite film, I don't know whether you know, a film called Midnight Express.
Yeah.
I like it. The films I like true stories. And that guy who gets caught in Turkey trying to smuggle hash out of the country, and he gets caught, and it's what goes on, you know, sort of thing. I mean, this place is like a hellhole where he's in prison. And I know some people from that part of the world, and they say there's lots of places like that, and people think their relatives have gone missing. A lot of the time they're in those jails, but they're not allowed to contact anyone.
Yeah.
You know, that's my favorite film, really. And like I said before, Dad, I'm a mega Beatles fan. I've got all their films, things like that.
Nice. Now we know.
Over.
That's great. Well, Don, I'd love to have you on again sometime. There's, I'm sure, a million stories you have.
Do that. That would be wonderful.
Great. Thank you. And where can people follow you, Don?
Well, there's sort of the Don Powell Band. If they want to check out on the internet, there'll be lots of stuff there.
Great.
You know?
Great.
But yeah, things like that. Don Powell's Occasional Flame. I mean, there's lots of outlets around them, so I'll be around somewhere. Yeah.
Awesome. Hang on the line with me after I say goodbye to the audience. And audience, thank you so much for joining Don Powell and myself, Dan Shinder, here on Drum Talk TV, whether you watched live on Facebook or YouTube, or whether you're seeing the archives. And you can follow Drum Talk TV on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. You can check out all our 13 and a half years of interviews, documentaries, event coverage at drumtalktv.com and at drumtalktvbrilliance.com. You can check out our membership site where we have all kinds of special fun things for all types of music fans. And we appreciate y'all following what we do. And we'll be back soon for more fun. Thanks, everybody. And thanks, Don. Hang on with me for a moment. We will see everyone soon. Thanks.